internet, high speed. You don't need to live in the cities. You could take your laptop and herd sheep. That's what I'm going to do after I retire.
That's a good point. Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Talk Navajo. Today we have a very special guest. I am proud to have President of the Navajo Nation, Jonathan Nez, with us today.
Hello everybody, Jonathan Nez here. We're here with Ian.
Well, thank you again, Mr. President, for being here. You are actually my first interview, so I'm happy to have you here. So with that said, we are in full force into this 2022 presidential election for the Navajo Nation, and you're also still the president, and so you have a lot of responsibilities there too. And so I'm wondering, with all of the stress of the campaigning and all of the stress of being president, what do you do in your spare time to de-stress and to just collect yourself?
It's a good question, Ian. For me, it's just doing a lot of reading. And also, doing some activity as well. I try to keep running, try to stay active. As a matter of fact, Ian, one of the times when I'm out there on the trails is, a lot of decompression, and some of my good ideas come up from that. And then, just encourage everybody too to stay healthy and eat some healthy foods too as well. So that really helps me. I'm sure it will help others out there.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. I remember you talking a lot about engaging in running, and one of the pleasures that I've had, because my Uncle Pax Harvey, who's a Native American comedian, and one of the things that he's always talked about when he introduces you, I've noticed, is how you have engaged so much in physical activity and how health and wellness is important to you. And I thought that was always really unique.
Right. And Ian, sometimes Pax tells a story about how I lost a lot of weight. Believe it or not, I was 300 pounds at one point and started to, eat a little better and do a lot of more physical activity. And I actually lost 100 pounds. And I know Pax is always talking about that, and he's just a great advocate in healthy living and being a great motivational speaker. And so, Ian, I see that same attitude, positivity in you. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I said, yeah, I got to check out the Let's Talk Navajo show with Ian and talk about being Navajo. So good job, good role models too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Now, we live in what seems like unprecedented times for our people, especially with, global issues that have had huge impacts in our community. And most recently, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And then now even I've heard there's conversations of overturning or looking at tribal sovereignty with ICWA, or the Indian Child Welfare Act. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think that's going to impact the Navajo Nation, and what do you think you can do to prevent, the encroachment onto our tribal sovereignty?
Well, the two cases that you mentioned, we're a sovereign nation. So we have the ability, tribal communities have the ability to make our own laws. So we have our own laws on the books. And so only the Navajo people or their designee, which are our council delegates, can change those laws. So I appreciate the federal government, at least the Congress, recognizing that inherent sovereignty of tribes. But of course, the courts, just recently, there was the Castro Huerta case about who has jurisdiction of non-Navajo or non-natives on Native American lands. And so the courts rule that the states have jurisdiction. And so your point there, it does hurt self-reliance and self-sufficiency that tribes are wanting to do. You would think that anything that happens on our nation is governed by the nation, the tribal nation.
Right.
But because of these U.S. Supreme Courts, the states intrude, the federal government intrudes, and it really pushes us back. And it goes against our treaty, the Treaty of 1868, at least for Navajos. And,
Absolutely.
as we're going to continue to fight, though, we're not just going to feel sorry for ourselves with the U.S. Supreme Court decisions. We can have a legislative fix, and that's Congress. Congress can make that change for us as long as we all 500 plus federally recognized tribes come together to press on Congress to make these changes.
Absolutely.
It's definitely something to think about. I think a lot of people don't really truly understand how these kind of decisions that seem like they're so far off, how they're going to have real impacts in our communities. And it's always reassuring to hear that our leaders, understand our sovereignty and know that we can safeguard our people from those kinds of hurtful decisions up at that far level on the federal level.
Right. Well, Ian, if I could add to that just real quick, that's why it's important for all of us to get out and vote, not just for the president of the Navajo Nation, but to vote for Congress, the U.S. representatives, the U.S. senators, all the way down to the state level at-large positions like governor. Because look at what happened the last 4 years. That president put those judges into the U.S. Supreme Court that have a different outlook towards tribes. So it's very important that we put people that are in positions of leadership that are like-minded and that have a heart for tribal communities. And I don't know your politics, Ian, but I think we got a good president right now, Joe Biden. And if there was a vacancy in the U.S. Supreme Courts, of course, he'll put somebody in there that cares for tribal communities.
Well, based off of that, and if you are to be elected again, you would have a second term as presidency. And so I'm just curious, what are some of the most important priorities for you if you were to obtain a second term?
Well, first of all, when we got into office, Vice President and I, 3 years ago, who would have known that we would be facing a pandemic, right? Nobody knew. We were ready to rock and roll and try to do some changes, and boom, we got hit with COVID-19. But I think the administration, our team, did an outstanding job in pushing back against COVID-19. We were out there, 110 chapters. I was shoulder to shoulders with a lot of our lawyers, our public safety personnel, and our healthcare professional, handing out food and supplies. And we were scared, obviously, because there was no vaccine back then. But I thought it was important. I think we all thought it was important that the Navajo people see their leaders on the front lines of this war against COVID-19. And now as we transition into the future, because of COVID, we got $715 million from CARES Act. We got over $2 billion from ARPA. And just last week, our council approved the remaining amount for the American Rescue Plan to over $2 billion. And so there's still a lot of work to do. We got to get running water, electricity, broadband telecommunication, build some homes so we can bring our people home. And Ian, I'm sure you want to come home, but it's hard without no water, electricity, or homes or employment. But I think this is a tipping point here that real big change is going to go into the future. I've worked from the local chapter level all the way up to the presidency. And so this is not on-the-job training. You got 14 other leaders running for this post. I don't know how much experience they have, but I think experience counts. And into the future, I ask for the Navajo people's vote. Nez for Prez, position number 10, August 2nd. And let's continue to make those changes, those permanent changes in infrastructure development here on the Navajo Nation.
And you bring up a good point, and my next question is actually about infrastructure. You mentioned, you want to bring people like me home, and I definitely, personally, I do want to come home and help my people. And sometimes especially with my line of work, media and technology and entertainment, a lot of that is going to be built off of infrastructure. And so I'm just curious, where are we on the Navajo Nation with infrastructure, and what else do we have left to do?
Well, I'm in Window Rock, Arizona right now, and I think we got pretty good internet. We have fiber optic cables going all across the Navajo Nation. That's because of the CARES Act and ARPA. And so, as you know, this social media is a very powerful tool, and if used in a positive way, it can be revolutionary on the Navajo Nation. For me, Ian, you probably may have noticed, we use social media a lot. And I think it's very important that the Navajo people know what their president is doing, know what the government is happening and everything. People call it photo ops, whatever, but I think transparency is key, because no other time in history do you know where your president is, because we use social media. You know where I'm at all the time. And if you reelect me, you'll know what your Navajo Nation government is doing. I don't know about others, but I think for you, Ian, there is just a great future here on the Navajo Nation for you, because we're going to bring infrastructure back to the nation. You can see some of these countries, Finland, Denmark, those countries in Europe, they put a lot of money into infrastructure early on. 20 to 30, 40 years later, they're booming. And I could see the same thing happening here on the Navajo Nation. Jobs will get created. Our people are working all over the United States, all over the world, building skyscrapers, building homes. They're helping out other tribes. Ian, now is the time. I'm sure let's bring them home, and let's go to nation building. It's about building a nation here on the Navajo Nation for our future, our children, our grandchildren, 7 generations from now. I think we're going to be, and this is the foundation, bringing infrastructure here. So, I think there's some great opportunities for you and for many others to come home, and you also will stay home, because water line will be available, electricity, homes will be available, internet, high speed. You don't need to live in the cities. You could take your laptop and herd sheep. That's what I'm going to do after I retire.
That's a good point. One thing that I remember, and you have been president for much of my mature life, and when I started to actually pay more attention to politics and become more interested in paying a closer attention to, and I think that's something that came from this past presidency of the United States presidency. There was an elected leader who a lot of us just felt didn't reflect our personalities or our characteristics, especially from my generation, the youth. So I've heard you talk a lot about your perspectives on youth, and I've always appreciated that. And so being somebody who is attending a larger institution for pursuing education, higher education, I have had to take on, student loans, and just to, because it's just the reality for our situation. Diné families don't have enough money to afford, high college tuitions. And so I'm curious and much of my audience is younger people. And so I'm just curious, what are steps you think you would take to kind of help students who are struggling from pursuing higher education?
Well, Ian, I just want to say to you and to all your listeners and viewers that, be strong, be resilient, don't give up. For me, after high school, I went into, local government, but I still listen to my family members, go to school, get an education, and I was able to go to NAU and get a bachelor's degree in political science and pre-law, and got a master's degree in public administration. And I'm not boasting, but I'm just saying that, there's a lot of wealth of knowledge out there And yes, I too got into debt because of that. Even on top of the Navajo Nation scholarship.
Mhm.
You know, back then the tuition was low and there was not a lot of Navajo people that were going to the university. So there was a lot of money available for them. But now tuition increased, and then there's a lot more of us, 405,000 plus Navajos, and we're going to get our higher education. So the allocation of funding is lessening. But what I'm saying to the Navajo Nation Council, and I tried this my first year, right before COVID, I wanted to put $50 million aside for a scholarship endowment. Because sometimes when you get an Navajo Nation scholarship, it's income based. Now, if your parents make a lot of money, you may not get a lot of scholarship or maybe even none. But this $50 million would be appropriated. It would be invested, obviously, and then you use the interest for scholarship money. But to help students, you know, I would say when you're 18, you're on your own, you know, but our process, we still use your parents' income after 18. That shouldn't be the case. That way, students can get a little bit more. One of the requirements in this $50 million endowment is that people that you get this scholarship, they have to come back to Navajo Nation, and we'll have a job waiting for you in the Navajo Nation government so you can gain that experience. So that way you come back and you help your people. And the other thing too is if people took out student loans, right? Come back to work for the Navajo Nation government, and we will repay your loan through this endowment that we started. And the council didn't approve it. I don't know why, but then COVID came. So I'm going to reintroduce that this year for our kids. And I just really need the youth, and maybe Ian, you can help me by talking to our council delegates and get the word out and say, President Nez is going to get a $50 million endowment for our future students and get it across the finish line, because, you know, our youth are our future, you know. And Ian, people say our young people are future leaders. Ian, you are a leader right now, which I appreciate. And, you know, I think college and university is very important, but also our way of life teaching, what we learn at home and what we learn at the school, putting them together is, you know, is very powerful for Indigenous peoples around the world.
I couldn't agree more. I want to talk a little bit also about one of the recent forums, because I've been following a lot of the forums. There was a moment from the Neck College Forum where you and presidential candidate Justin Jones had a little bit of disagreement on a specific piece of legislation that you vetoed. And so I was just curious, you know, at first I didn't know much about that situation. It kind of totally passed me that happened. And so I went back and I had to do some research on the specific legislation, and it was legislation that would have provided funding for the Hatahtli Association, the Medicine Men Hatahtli Association. And so I'm just curious, you know, why did you veto that specific piece of legislation? Because, you know, I didn't think you had enough time to explain it during the forum. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about that.
Awesome. That's a great question, Ian. Thank you so much for allowing me to set the record straight. You know, there was money that was being requested for faith-based organization. That's the Medicine Man Association, the Hatahtli group, the Native American Church, and even the pastors who were, helping out during the COVID pandemic. And so someone took a piece of that out and said that we want to give $1 million to this organization. And, you know, they weren't allowed to put the other amendments on. But when we really looked at the budget, Ian, over half of that money was to start the organization. When the debate was going on, they were saying that they were going to give money to the Hatahtlis, the healers, for what they went through and what they're using, what they're helping out the people for. But when you look into the detail, it was to get funding to a association, maybe a nonprofit organization, getting staff. And, I was like, that it's supposed to go to the healers. And on top of that, what happened to the Native American church healers, right? The Medicine Men Association, and also the pastors or the faith-based organization. That's why I was saying, don't divide the people. Those legislations tend to divide the people because, if you approve it, then you're going to put somebody else on the outside of that. And, my comment about not dividing the people was, I think, appropriate, and then if you heard me, I went into the language too, because some of these candidates say that Navajo should be spoken by people that are running for the president. And I said, we took care of that. The Navajo people voted and said that you don't have to be fluent to be the Navajo Nation president. Our young people out there shouldn't be told because they don't know the language, then they're not able to be the president or the vice president of the Navajo Nation. And I don't think that's the case. I really truly believe that we're all Navajo. Regardless if one of us don't speak Navajo, I'm fluent. I grew up with Navajo as my first language, but not everybody's the case. And I think people that are Navajo should have the ability to lead our nation. And the Navajo people voted for that. Now, if the Navajo people vote to reverse that, then it's up to the Navajo people again.
Okay. Well, I also this is going to be my last question. We'll wrap it up here. There are a lot of candidates and there's a lot of options this year for us Navajo people who have to elect a leader. And so there's a lot of people to listen to, and that's kind of why I started making the TikTok videos that I make and things like that, just because there's so many different perspectives you have to listen to, and sometimes it's hard to grasp all of it, especially through the forums, which can be super long, and then you guys don't really get the opportunity to say as much as you want to say at the forums. And so, I'm just curious, what do you think sets you apart, and what makes you different from all of these other people, all of these other candidates?
For me, our Nez for Prez campaign, you already know what you're going to get. I've been vetted for 4 years. The Navajo people know my past, and I've overcame some challenges in life, just like anybody else. We slip and fall. I've done that when I was young. And that was one of the things that came up on the last election. But the Navajo people said, hey, he learned from his mistakes and he overcame his difficult situations. And now he's ready to lead the nation. And, over 67% of the Navajo people voted for us last. So, we shouldn't, there's no perfect candidate. These, all 15 of us, they have some great ideas. They have some, interesting perspectives. But with the Navajo Nation election coming up, Nez for Prez, transparency is going to continue. And I'm not on the job training. I went to school. I was a leader at the local chapter. I moved my way up. I defended our Navajo people all the way, our youth, everyone. That's why I was saying, let's not divide the people. We need to continue on as a Navajo nation, just as we tackle COVID-19, all of us together. We were told to stay home. Yes, we helped each other out by handing out food and supplies. That's what I mean. That's one people, one nation. Rather than dividing the people, we need to kind of come together once again and move forward. And I'm sure, Ian, you probably noticed, never before, I think, that Navajo Nation is on the television, on the news, almost every week. People talking about the Navajo Nation. We brought the Navajo Nation back to #1 in this country as an indigenous nation, maybe all around the world, because The Navajo people are overcomers. They're resilient. They're strong. And we overcame a pandemic. And now in my second term, I ask for your support because we still got a lot of job to do here, a lot of work to get infrastructure. And that's key. And that's going to set the foundation. Even after I leave, you're only allowed 2 terms. And maybe that's why we don't move forward. We don't re-elect the same president every 4 years. It's like, I think the only president that got 2 terms was Joe Shirley. And other than that, everybody would say, oh, we need a new leader. We need a new leader. And when that happens, there's a big learning curve. I was the vice president for 4 years and became the president. And now that whole continuity of leadership will continue into the second term with your help and with the people's help. And I ask for your support on August 2nd in the primary election. I'm position number 10. So if you know in Navajo, the Nez Na means 10. So Nez Na, Nez for Prez all the way. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Mr. President, for taking this opportunity and time out of your busy schedule to be here with us today. I do agree that there are definitely some very interesting perspectives in this presidential lineup. I mean, some of them I don't necessarily agree with, I would have to say. Some of them are pretty interesting and can get a little bit humorous here and there. But thank you so much for being here, and I wish you all the best of luck on your campaign. And with that said, everyone, this has been Let's Talk Navajo, and Hagone.